I welcome all the panelists on this panel, and it's really a panel which I'm looking forward to. So if everyone could please take a moment to introduce himself. Dr. Karen Salch, please help me with the last name. Then Dr. Landes and Dr. Vargas. Thank you very much. Please unmute yourself, and so that we can start the panel.
Well, I will go first. Thank you very much for introduction. I will repeat my name again. My name is Karine Sargsyan. So
Thank you very much.
I'm a trained medical doctor and a psychologist, and working in different areas as a researcher and research manager. And to guide us through our world on predictability, actually, we have relied on focused sets of experts until now, whether healthcare, education, or geopolitics. However, no one individual expert could have predicted the narrow LAs that our world transcended through, especially in the last couple of years. Events like the COVID-19 pandemic or the Capitol Hill riots shook even the foundations of the future built on expert forecast. The frailty of the individual expert forecast that we have built, made ourselves upon now, are being challenged on several fronts. Firstly, since our economies and societies are highly complex, and since the future as such is made up of several composites, dynamics, and variables, a single expert, even if they happen to be the most experienced, would not be able to conceive, perceive, and understand all the possibilities, probabilities, and mutual impacts between variables, making it difficult to forecast with considerable accuracy. However, we would consider multiple expectations, beliefs, and preferences within checks and balances. In that case, and preferences within a framework or checks and balances, predictions become less robust and more predictable, resilient, and adaptable. Second, the evolutionary psychology of humans prefers predictability over unpredictability. Hence, we find it easier to believe in individual experts and their silver bullet predictions and solutions. However, we are increasingly including that reliable forecasts are always a shared endeavor rather than a single individual thinking and acting in isolation. Thirdly, even when the expert happens to be the most experienced, either their predictions could still incline towards one extreme, since they are forecasted by one or few individuals representing primarily their own experience and interest. This extremity in forecasting can lead to disasters easily, since a single person would never be able to consider all possibilities and probabilities. Considering the shortcomings of the conventional expert-oriented approaches to predicting our future, we have considered an entirely different scope of approach while researching and writing our book, The World in 2050, Enabling Governments, Innovators, and Businesses to Create a Better Future. The basic underlying assumption of our research is that how much credible and expert one is, an individual would not be able to predict the future, since the future is way too struggled and disruptive. However, when several of these expert opinions are considered from a collective intelligence point of view, we can draw practical conclusions when we look for correlations and intersections. This would help with better predictability of events, since it engaged public expectations, opinions, and their preferences within a framework of checks and balances. Our research regulates one-person expert-centric closed decisions to help the overall system be more resilient and adaptable to today's complexity and varying environment. So today, together with the co-authors, we shall be talking about the most important trends that we are predicting to come alive by 2050 with this method. Tamas will speak on the geopolitics and leadership, and Sanjit on job and education. And I will speak about the future on healthcare. Well, I'm happy for this opportunity anyway, and thank you very much. This is very high-end audience. I mean, not only because it is Davos, but because I wasn't sure of my own future several years ago. Started to have hemiparesis during migraine attacks in 2018. What exactly means that the left part of my body began to hang just like dead flesh and wasn't reacting to my own brain's orders. Do you know what a human being, especially a doctor, does in this situation? Just panic. But to my fortune, I got one of the best neurosurgeons in the world. If I would be born half of a century earlier, it would be not possible. I would not be alive or would be absolutely disabled by now, although I ran through a month-lasting short-time memory loss period, which was horrible at that time, but funny if I look back now, because there are some anecdotes. I have the same brain capacity, I mean, thinking and logic, and I'm extremely happy about. This type of surgery is available only in the developed world. Today, I'm standing here as one of the lucky humans who had the availability of an incredibly secure, but also very innovative and research-prone health systems as the one in Austria. Being a doctor, researcher, manager, and a patient, I see the future of medicine and healthcare in an integrative approach. The future changes will be in two different levels or areas, let's say, the acting healthcare and the forming healthcare. The acting triad includes first healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, therapists, etc. And the question is, who will devote their lives to this very challenging profession? Just some numbers. In the US, between 300 and 400 doctors commit suicide per year. It's a doctor a day on average. Just some more statistics to plasticity for the message. In the developed countries, for every hour spent with the patients, doctors are spending 1 and even 1.5 hours with paperwork, mainly for the insurance company. There is also a nice message. On the other hand, the new generation of doctors is interested in innovation and making better decisions rather than in traditions and century-long working SOPs. Parallel to researching doctors, we will also have business-trained doctors, so-called MD, MBAs, and politics-trained doctors to make the right laws and fitting models for healthcare and medicine. Second, future diseases and new challenges. The future conditions and hotspot will be affected either by aging society, as we all know, like sedentary lifestyle-related diseases, obesity, diabetes, and psychiatric states due to overload of information and sharper life competition, or by new kind of infectious diseases and agents and or consequences of not recycling, which is not only about infections, but about heavy metals drainage in drinking water, soil corrosion, and other effects that we don't know yet. We research to explore which diseases are most likely to cause the next global pandemic and racing to keep that from happening. Still more resistant bacteria, viruses, or prion may cause another pandemic that we cannot even imagine today. Third, future diagnostic and therapeutic technology, which is developing with enormous speed. This is no doubt that our society is developing much faster than before. This also applies to medical technology, which has reached an incredible level today, but what is ahead of us? To mention just some of technologies that people predicting that will be, like portable health monitoring tools or indicators like my e-watch, so we have it already. Mobile applications providing medical support, artificial intelligence in medicine, which became precisely accurate, especially in the picture-based diagnostics, genome editing technology that may once be the trend in xenotransplantation, and biohacking, which against the expectations with the word hacking, is the main goal of biohacking is very noble, to bring the human body to a new qualitative level, improving well-being and refining the vital processes. Well, the forming triad of future healthcare and medicine will be about first the healthcare trends. In 2004, we were speaking about the personalized medicine. And several years ago came the term precision medicine out and started to even more tend the healthcare to the single person. The preventive enhancing approach, digital healthcare, integrated medicine will become usual. The future is not about how we treat the diseases, but how we prevent them from occurring at all. Second, health system challenges. We need to fight the idea of seeing hospitals as business. We need to enhance affordability. In the future, I hope very much that we will overcome the problem of payability and affordability in favor of health accessibility, systems and based quality sustainability, integrative health patient experience, and simply better health. And third, the enablers like regulatory enhancement, researching and curing medicine symbiosis, new integrative organizational and business models and healthcare platforms will make future medicine more accessible if politics will keep the speed of technology and curative development. In the future, we will be able to heal wounds in minutes, grow full-fledged organs, bones and cells, create human part equipment, repair damaged brains, and much more. Integrative healthcare infused with human approach, holistic well-being and comfort, supported by high-end diagnostic and therapeutic technology will be the main factor. So in the future, not the virus or any other infective agent will be contagious, but the health itself. And I want to finish with the words of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So we need to act in healthcare with the heart. Thank you, and over to you, Tamás.
Thank you very much, Karin. And Carl, if you allow me, then I continue. I'm in Lyon, actually, where Antoine Saint-Exupéry was born 122 years ago. And it is my pleasure, as Karin said, to talk about the geopolitics, which was my part in researching for our book that we are writing together with Karin and Sanjit. I spent the last 28 years approximately in the United Nations systems and worked across 4 continents, and most recently I'm working with the WHO's Cancer Research Agency here in France. I'm also a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, and together with Sanjit, we are very active in that community. So in an interest of time, I will be short, but just to summarize the findings of the chapter on geopolitics and leadership, which provides a context to the healthcare topic that Carl mentioned in the beginning. We feel that the world is a new world is emerging, which is full of opportunities for businesses, investors, and policymakers. And this is the underlying assumption of our book, to build a better future. Everything seems to indicate, though, that the world is undergoing another period of historical and massive transition and a rebalancing of economic and political power. But I don't want to go into all the usual details of how the world might change in 30 years from now. I rather would like to to mention a few interesting insights that we gathered through the various interviews and questionnaires that we used in the process of writing our book. I'm sure that those who are listening to us, you will agree that we are in a crucible moment of our history, of our human history, where leadership will define how we can meet those critical global challenges that are facing us. At the same time, we seem to be a little bit short of what I call true global leaders. But the good news is that you all may have a role to play in driving positive change in the future. What we have found through the various interviews is that the majority of respondents are cautiously optimistic about the future. I think that's a very positive message that I would like to leave with you. To the question that we posed, which was, what is the single most evolutionary change we will see in the next 50 years? There were a lot of interesting questions. I would like to mention just four general trends that came out. So first, we are entering a human age, or the age of empathy, where Moore's law can be applied to the human potential curve. Second, humans will lose their natural biological identities and become Homo nanotechnus. Third, it's just a matter of time before we can download ourselves fully into the digital domain, and in doing so, pull the plug on our biological identities. And fourth, the future will be about the use of technology and science to connect us with nature instead of thinking that we can control it. Now, no matter what, a rapidly changing future will also call for new leadership styles to emerge. They will have to embrace, and they will likely rely on neuroscience to integrate mindfulness strategies, enhancing performance and resilience. They will also be more aware of methods of manipulation, ensuring that responsible leaders remain ethical and use their talent for good. And we will try to transition towards flat organic network structures based on connected autonomy to improve our ability to scale. And I would like to end, before I hand over to Sanjit, with a quote from Adam Grant, who is a fellow at World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. And he published a book recently titled Think Again, where he explained that we need to recognize that everything we do as a leader and as a human requires the ability to forecast the future. And we could not agree more as authors of this book. And now, Sangeet, I hand over to you to hear what you have to say about the future of our world.
Thank you so much, Mark. History repeats. If so, the question is that future would rather be a rehashed version of history rather than the flying cars, dinosaur zoos, and the ever young humans which we have been made to believe. If history repeats, our future would rather be an accumulation of these boring, minuscule movements rather than quantum jumps in time. The quantum jumps which are adrenal pumping, exciting. But probably future, like I mentioned earlier, might just be a rehash of history. My name is Sangeet Varghese. I'm the founder of a research and consulting firm called LeadCap, which primarily focuses on South Asia, Middle East, and Africa, and the president of IFSPD, International Foundation of Sustainability, Peace, and Development. So I would look at two sectors where my co-speakers, Karine and Tomasz, left off. I would look at education and work. what are we looking at in 2050 when it comes to education work? I personally believe that education is a very important topic because our world gains every time when a person gets educated. And a world pays a price when people go illiterate, when people go uneducated. Currently, illiteracy makes our world lose 7% of its GDP. In 2050, the prediction is that this cost would get reduced to 4%. Another interesting fact, why education is important. Education has been a mirror reflection of our work. Let me explain. During the initial stages of humanity, while we were hunter-gatherers in the African savannas, learning was done through play and exploration. Our kids had unlimited freedom from adults. Learning was about intense application of skill and knowledge. It was not at all labor intensive, no long hours. In fact, learning and education was about, it was fun, exciting, and there was absolutely no difference between work and play. The minute we ended up stepping into the next phase of humanity, which is agriculture, there was a complete disruption. From an exciting, unadult supervised kind of environment, we stepped into long hours of toil, unskilled, repetitive labor. Children had to go through long hours of adult supervision. If you are able to perform under adult supervision, if you're able to work long hours and repetitively long hours, that was a good student. Industrial revolution, disruption again. Then the question became how to pre-adapt our children to the industrialized world. A world of repetitive indoor toil, noise and crowds and collective discipline, regulated by factory whistle and clock. Think about it, until that time, learning was dictated by the movements of the sun and the moon, and suddenly it became dictated and regulated by the factory whistle and clock. So repetition, hard work, discipline, that became the cornerstones of education. If you look at it, what I mentioned earlier, work being a mirror reflection, or rather education being a mirror reflection of work. Look at our schools right now. 6 hours of school, repetitive homework, adult micromanagement, strictly regimented, compartmentalization of grades. Look at the way our students sit inside a class. We have got benches, and the students sit inside lines facing the teacher, just like an assembly line. In 2050, our work environment will change. From the digital world, we would even step into a post-digital world. From a totalitarian institutions, just like Tamar stated earlier, built on hierarchies and discipline at this point of time, with brains at the top and hands at the bottom, organizations would open up. They would become highly responsive, they would become flat, they would become dynamic, and they would be no longer driven by rules and hierarchy. And the best part is that there will be no difference between work and play. From the metro cities, which we are kind of rooted in as work, it would move to everywhere. 2050 would also see the rise of micro corporations. Currently, our work is defined by macro corporations, multinational corporations, where size is of great importance. But 2050 would be about micro corporations, which would be defined by the smallness, the tinyness in size, and at the same time, their efficiency in globalizing. These micro corporations would have near zero employees. They would have no fixed assets, and they would have shorter go-to-market. 2050 would also be about the age of machines. It would be about the big data. Big data would emerge as a cornerstone. Corporations would gain insights in real time, fraction of milliseconds. We would not have to wait for those quarterly reports and the annual reports. But whenever a thing is happening, the prediction would just come in. 2050 would also be about the emergence of what we call as the cobots, the robots which actually work alongside us, not really as competition, but collaborating and augmented. Humans would be augmented by machines. Our efficiency would become super efficiency at that point of time. The interesting part is that education, being a mirror reflection of work, would again evolve from that hunter-gatherer phase where you couldn't differentiate between work as well as play, to agriculture, which was about the long hours of toil, to the industrial age, where it was about the 6 hours and the repetitive work. When we step into the digital world part of it, our education would evolve from the Prussian style of teaching kids to be disciplined factory workers. Schools would move away from strict hierarchies and the top-down kind of a thing. Right now, your education is top-down. The teachers teach, students learn. 2050, it would be completely horizontal learning, flexible, open, exciting, and most importantly, gamified. You will learn as you are playing. You will learn all the time. You will learn practically rather than theoretically. Learning will be innate, ubiquitous. In 2050, exactly like work, your learning will also be driven by artificial intelligence and big data. Personal data, learning style, abilities, and fully customized curriculum, tailored to each person. So artificial intelligence would detect that this is exactly the education which I want, which would be completely different from the same person who's there with me. In fact, rule-based subjects like mathematics, physics, we are predicting that it would just be taken over by the artificial intelligence algorithms. By 2050, we are also predicting that it would be the end of pedagogy. Currently, a student needs to learn math and physics. Even if he's interested only in arts, he's forced to learn these subjects. But by 2050, we would move into the project-based learning, live projects, a series of activities. And just like micro corporations, what we ended up seeing earlier, learning would also move from these crowded classrooms with 30, 40, 50 students, what we are seeing at this point of time. We would move into micro schools, which would be more of a family-driven affair. No more longer hours, no more adult supervision, and there is no difference. There would be no difference between work and play. History repeats. Our world in 2050, enabling governments, innovators, businesses to create a better future. In this book, in our research, Karina, Tamash, and I are trying to unravel our future bit by bit. Probably these bits which we are going to unravel might not be as exciting as some of those predictions which we have had earlier, like what I mentioned, which is about the flying cars and the DNA, we creating mammoths and the dinosaurs in our zoos. It might not be as exciting, but we believe that in these boring, minuscule movements in history creates our future. And this is exactly what we are trying to unravel through our research, through our book, The World in 2050, Enabling Governments, Innovators, and Businesses to Create a Better Future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. I'm looking forward for this book. We the current panel will stay on, and we are changing